Welcome to Rising Stars, where Miriam Knight, publisher of New Consciousness Review, interviews exciting new voices in the world of progressive and transformational books, films, and ideas, who offer intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us as we celebrate the conscious awakening and explore many expressions of consciousness in action.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Miriam Knight, the publisher of New Consciousness Review, and here on the Rising Stars show, I will be introducing you to 2 or 3 of these authors each show, especially those who might not have had as many opportunities to be heard, but who offer intriguing information and inspiration. As you listen to our guests, I hope you'll find some food for thought and learn a little more about who we are and all we can become. Now, my first guest today is Jerry Lane. Jerry is a retired carpenter and a foreman supervisor who earned a master's degree in creative writing from San Francisco State University. During the Vietnam War, he served as a platoon commander for the U.S. Marines. Jerry has transmitted several hundred lessons from beings known as Christ Michael and Mother Spirit over many years. Their best lessons are collected in his books, Adventure of Being Human. It's a series that includes his first book that covers the lessons that he received from both Christ Michael and Mother Spirit. And then his current book is called The Adventure of Being Human, Mother Spirit Speaks, that just came out this year from Origin Press. It provides a selection of another set of these transmissions exclusively from Mother Spirit. Now, Jerry is a longtime student of the Yantra book, as well as a student of Zen teachings. And I'm very pleased to welcome him. Welcome, Jerry.
Oh, glad to be here, Miriam.
Jerry, this is interesting that you have these 2 sort of covalent entities, Christ Michael and the Divine Mother or Mother Spirit. How do you conceive of this Mother Spirit?
Well, following, as you said, I was a student of the Yantra book, and it teaches, and she confirms that she is a direct daughter of the Infinite Spirit. So she's like our Mother Spirit for this whole part of the galaxy, you might say. She's a Mother Spirit for over almost close to 4 million inhabited worlds like ours. So the Yantra cosmology is very, very vast. It corresponds to all of our recent discoveries of the universe. And so Mother Spirit is this creator, daughter of the Infinite Spirit. And she's actually, the other great thing about Mother Spirit, she's actually part of us. She's part of our mentality, if you will. And so we're more, as she says, we're more than just a super intelligent animal. We actually have this whole spirit dimension with part of us. And then, in a sense, she's part of that. She gives us a little boost inside. So that's who and what she is and what she does for us.
Well, so what is the division of labor between the divine feminine or the Mother Spirit and the Michael figure?
Right. They're very much equals. Michael is a creator son of both God the Father, God the Son, the first 2 personalities of deity. Then Mother Spirit is part of is a daughter of the Infinite Spirit. So Michael
she kind of completes the Trinity?
A kind of a Father Spirit, and Mother Spirit is the female aspect. And since she's behind all of the female aspects of deity that all the world's religions have had forever.
Well, it's interesting that the 2 tend to complement each other. So reading your book, I get the feeling that the male side, the Michael side, is more concerned with order and progression of evolution and so on, whereas the Mother Spirit seems to me to be more, you said in the book that she's in charge of creating angels and creating, the material form here.
Yes, she's very much the origin of life on our planet and a number of other planets. So life as we know it, our physical form, comes very directly from her. And as you noted, she's also the mother of a whole host of celestial personalities. And again, this is something that within the Urantia book, there's several chapters on her, hundreds of pages. And for myself personally, I've been transmitting her for over 10 years. And there's a website called TM Archives, the teaching mission. I'm part of that. And the archives has over about 150 to 200 of the lessons that I've transmitted. And also, if your listeners want to go to TM Archives, they can actually hear me transmitting her. There's a lot of audio files there, about 100 or so. They can actually hear me just personally transmitting Mother Spirit.
Well, I'm curious, Jerry, you say that you're a retired carpenter and you were in the military, and now you're focusing on your writing. How did you begin to transmit these celestial beings?
Well, I was a student of the Urantia book for about 40 years or so, and then about 18, 20 years ago, our little study group, all over the world, there's just study groups of the Urantia book. We heard that in some of these Urantia study groups, people were receiving messages from the spiritual beings. And so we invited someone come out from St. Louis called Donna D'Angelo. She has her own website called Center for Christ Consciousness. And I literally sat right by her side almost every week for 4 years. And she kept telling all of us that anybody could do this. Just I'll tell your listeners, anybody can do this kind of transmitting if they just tune in to this Mother Spirit right within them. And so Donna gave me some personal lessons, and all of a sudden she was leaving to go over to Oakland, and I had inherited her group. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting there with like 6 or 8 people around me, and I just started transmitting. And so from the very beginning, I started transmitting both Michael and Mother Spirit, like every other week or so. And like I say, it's built up to about, between the two of them, almost 300, 350 of these transmissions now.
And the information that you bring through, is it like an expansion or an elaboration on the material in the Urantia books?
It's very much an elaboration, and it's a much more personal thing. Another thing I should mention, Miriam, is that these sessions usually last about an hour, and Michael and Mother Spirit, they'll give a half an hour talk, a lesson, and then the rest of it is questions and answers. So I'll tease your listeners with the idea that if you had a question to ask Mother Spirit, what would that be? What is it that you really don't know? You're not going to play games here, but you don't know, but you would really love to know and have this opportunity to ask her. So I'm envisioning maybe the third book of this series that comes out, The Adventure of Being Human, will be just that, all these answers that she's given to questions that have come up over the years.
Well, I have a question that you can transmit the next time you're in contact. I was reading your book, and aside from Mother Spirit herself, every other figure in the book is male. How come?
Well, that's the first book you're talking about. The first book, The Adventure of Being Human. Excuse me. In this very first book, it was about equal Michael and her. Now, the second book that I'm talking about today, The Adventure of Being Human, Part 2, is exclusively Mother Spirit, because we felt that with Michael, Christ Michael, there's been so much written about him the last 2,000 years since he was here as Jesus. We would devote an entire book just to Mother Spirit. So in this second book, The Adventure of Being Human 2, is strictly Mother Spirit.
Yes, I appreciate that. But when you look through the transmissions, and then you look at you have a very helpful appendix with an explanation of all the different personalities. And you talk about the sort of hierarchy of administration going back to the very central core of paradise and working out into the various universes and super universes and sub-universes and so on. But everybody that you mention in terms of administrative task is male. That is what I was getting at.
Oh, yes, Miriam, that's a very important point because it's not just feminists, but a lot of people wonder about that. Both Michael and Mother Spirit and all of these transmissions, the Urantia book itself says it's just a convention. In other words, above Michael and Mother Spirit, where you have a kind of a male and female personality, above them, it's not differentiated by sex at all. In other words, they talk about God the Father or the eternal Son of paradise. This is strictly a convention because obviously God is the origin of both. God's the origin of everything. And so it isn't until you get down to our own local universe of about 4 million planets or so, that's the first time you have a differentiation of both male and female. In other words, all the entities above them are not sexual. They're just referring them to in a male pronoun is just a convention. They want to make that very clear that there's no sexism involved here. That's a big thing they teach against is the total equality of the sexes. There's even a part in the Urantia book where there actually was an Adam and an Eve on the planet about 40,000 years ago. Another great love story if your listeners want to get into it. And how shocking it was for the primitive people of that time to see both as equal male and female.
Well, I'm very relieved to hear that, Jerry. And we're going to take a quick break now and stay with us because we'll be right back with Jerry Lane, the transmitter of the adventure of being human.
Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Radio Namaste leads you down the yellow brick road into portals of consciousness with the blue-collar goddess as your host. Interviews with humans who could be famous or just popular, and answers to everything are on the agenda. Tune into OMTimes Radio and drop in on Thursdays at 3 Eastern. It's a different brand of enlightenment.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
And we are back speaking with Jerry Lane, the author or the vehicle for The Adventure of Being Human, Book 2, Mother Spirit Speaks. Now, Jerry, before the break, we were reassuring our listeners that the use of the male figures of speech was merely a convention. Now, I want to get into the actual content of the messages in this book, because as I was reading them, I was really inspired by them. One of the main or important qualities that Mother Spirit urges us to cultivate, both in ourselves and in our children, is curiosity. Now, why is that, Jerry?
Well, their whole notion is that truth itself, you might say with a capital T, is an encompassing, it's what surrounds all of us. And the only way to approach this is with a great amount of humility. And they say humility is the exact opposite of being humiliated. It's a spiritual quality of being aware of something enormous. Like you're sitting on the beach, you're aware of the whole ocean out there. You can feel tiny and humiliated, or you can be thankful that you're in touch with something so enormous. This is the essence of curiosity, of just being very open-minded, with a wonderful feeling of humility, of having this in touch with this enormous, enormous universe and all these millions of people all around us. And this is where they promise a kind of eternal life that is not a repetition. It would be a hell of boredom. But the fact that the universe is not repeating itself. And the only way to approach it is with this kind of curiosity, a hunger to go out and embrace it and feel it and experience it. So they talk about this wonderful partnership of curiosity and courage, because it takes nerve. It takes nerve to feel humble, that you only have a very small grasp of things so far, and yet you have a whole eternity to go out there and keep exploring. That's the essence of curiosity. It's a blessing.
I loved that combination of courage and curiosity. And if I understood correctly from the book, we humans are one of the vehicles through which the universe expands, God expands, or God evolves. It's like there's a coevolution where we are partners with the divinity. Is that a reasonable understanding?
Oh, that's absolutely part of it. Mother Spirit teaches that one of God's essence is a thing of sharing. In other words, if it wasn't for God's desire to share, there wouldn't be any universe, there wouldn't be any creation at all. And his whole idea is that he lives through us. He's actually a part of us. He also has a presence within us that almost every religion acknowledges, this small, still voice within us. And Mother Spirit teaches that, in a sense, we are this extension of his experience. He experiences the whole universe through all of his children, trillions and trillions of all kinds of beings. This is, in a sense, what he wants to do. And also he shares his creativity with us, because we are actually spiritual beings who are kind of co-creating our own reality. So as we have our own subjective inner reality in relationship to everything, we share that with him right inside of us.
Now, Yantra is the name for our planet Earth.
Yes.
And we are part of a universe and a system of planets that is under the aegis of the Christ Michael figure.
And Mother Spirit, right.
And Mother Spirit. And it really, the creation of this universe really was a collaborative effort of the male and female spirits coming together.
Yes, it's they're getting away from the old notion, the old pantheistic notion that God personally does everything. God actually creates, you might say, subordinate creative beings, like Michael and Mother Spirit, who actually out here in time and space actually create life, actually organize things. So the universe is actually created and then administered by subordinate beings like Christ Michael and Mother Spirit.
Makes sense.
Right.
And the quality, tell us about the divine spark within mankind. It kind of emerged at some stage. Do you have a sense of how that happened? Was it just natural evolution, or was it kind of guided intention?
Well, it's very intentional because Mother Spirit teaches we actually have three great spiritual influences right within us. We have her presence. We also have Christ Michael. Remember Jesus, as he mentioned to all of his followers, that his spirit of truth would come to live within us. So we have his spirit of truth within us. We also have a presence of God within us. But it's the very essence of spirit to let their children, us, to let us alone in one way. In other words, we actually have to ask for help. They're not intrusive at all in our life. They're there. They're actually augmenting and helping us, expand our lives, but they're not at all intrusive. And so they say this is the essence of being a good parent. You're there to back up your children, but you let them have their own life. You're not intruding and making them live for you. And this is how we actually have our own life, our own independent personality, because these great spiritual beings actually let us be.
Well, if they didn't let us be, as you mentioned at the beginning, it would be very boring because, if you are omniscient and you have everything pre-programmed, then there's no growth.
Well,
there's no surprise in it.
Well, they also teach that there is no, their omniscience does not extend, in other words, to all these beings. They give a relative degree of freedom. The very fact that we're free, the future has not happened yet, even for God. Because in other words, God actually lets us be, lets a whole universe of personal beings, gives them their freedom. He sets up certain parameters for us. We can't fly like birds, so we have to invent airplanes. But to a large degree, the future has not happened yet. The future is actually open for all of us because we are also, God shares his creativity with us. And so to a large degree, we are co-creating, you might say, our own future. That's the extent of our freedom if we only realize it.
What happened on the timeline in the 1980s?
Well, it's going back. We've been under kind of a spiritual quarantine for several 100,000 years. Our planet went into default. There actually was a thing called a Lucifer rebellion, and a certain amount of planets had joined this rebellion, and ours was one of them. It's one of the reasons why Michael chose to have his life as Jesus on this planet to help turn things around. And so in the 1980s, this quarantine was lifted, and our planet now is being reinstituted within all the celestial circuits and things. And this is why right now people can actually tune into spiritual beings or spiritual part of themselves. It's like Donna used to tease me that anybody can transmit Michael or Mother Spirit if they just have the training. If they just sit down in their meditation and say, okay, Mother Spirit, I'm open. What have you got for me? And start taking notes. It's that direct. And
a lot of people are doing that, in fact. Certainly.
Exactly.
From the stacks of books surrounding me. And I wonder, what was the thing that gave you confidence that you were, in fact, channeling these entities? Why was it just because it sounded very much like what your mentor was doing? Because I know a lot of people, when they're developing their intuitive gifts, have this worry that it's their imagination, they're making it up. What gave you the confidence?
I think, Miriam, this is where you put your finger right on it. This is the very first thing that occurred to me is, how do I know this isn't just what I think it should be? The only thing I can assure your listeners is that I myself know for myself I can't be so positive. That's the most remarkable thing about Michael and Mother Spirit. From their standpoint, from their viewpoint, from their point of view, I can't begin to create that, especially when I have like 5 or 6 people sitting around me. It's not like I'm hearing a voice in my mind and then repeating it. It's too instantaneous for that. Mm-hmm. And it's entering a space where the difficulty of transmitting is you have to be comfortable with not knowing what's coming next, because it's not coming from your own personality, like my conversation with you now. And also at the end of these transmissions, I have very little memory of what they were. So fortunately, I record them, and then I have help transmitting them. So, transcribing them, so you can actually read all these things if you go to that TM archives. So it's something that it's unmistakable once you do it, is that you have something coming through you. You cannot anticipate it. Mm-hmm. If you even start to anticipate it, it just stops.
And when you actually read the books, one is really impressed with the depth of wisdom and the feeling that really comes through that you resonate with. So, Jerry, what is next for you?
Well, like I say, I continue doing this work. Once a month, I have a light line teleconference. And
what's the website where people can join that or listen to it?
No, it's a teleconference. It's you call a number.
Yeah, but they have to find out where it is. So.
Oh yeah, well, my excuse me. Yes, thank you for mentioning. My website is called evolvingsouls.org.
Is it evolving-souls or just evolving souls?
Evolving, actually a little dash in evolving-souls.org. And once they go there, they can, all this information is there, especially for this light line teleconference I do once a month. And then I have a group that meets here. We're taking off for the summer, but I have a group here that meets in my home. And this is where several hundred of these transmissions, what you call channeling, that's where you'll find them on TM Archive.
Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for being with us today. We've been speaking with Jerry Lane about The Adventure of Being Human, Book 2, Mother Spirit Speaks. So check out his website, evolving-souls.org. And I want you to stay with us because we're going to be back shortly with our next guest.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
If you've ever said, I do want it all. I do want happiness. I do want love. And I do desire the happily ever after fairy tale life, then this show is for you. Join me, Dana Nicole Brandon, for my internationally acclaimed show, Bridal Talk Radio, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, where I'll bring you the top experts in the fields of communication, money, relationships, finance, pleasure, play, travel, sexuality, parenting, real estate, adventure, comfort, care, passion, and love.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
The truth is, you can't change the world if you're broke. I know, I tried. Isn't it time you turned your life's calling into a profitable, freedom-based business? I'm Michelle Barr. Join me every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for Sacred Success.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
We are back My guest now is Bennett Kobb. Ben is the author of the Guru-Free Guide to Nada Yoga, Sound Current Meditation for the Rest of Us, published as an ebook just this year. Ben is a senior member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and a member of the International Remote Viewing Association and the Society for Scientific Exploration. He has a long-time interest in scientific anomalies and Eastern self-cultivation practices. His previous book, Wireless Spectrum Finder, is a compendium of radio technologies and frequencies. Now, his latest book is about a different frequency, one that resounds in every human consciousness. Meditation on inner sound is practiced by millions of people, but it remains largely unknown in the West. Ben's new book peels away the curtain on this yogic technique. Welcome, Ben. I am so delighted you could join us.
I'm happy to be here. Miriam, are we communicating okay?
We are fine.
I'm delighted to learn about OMTimes Radio and New Consciousness Review.
Well, thank you. Now, we know what the word yoga refers to, union or connecting, and most of us are familiar with Hatha Yoga. But what is Nada Yoga, or it's also called Shabd Yoga?
Yes, that's right. This is one of the recognized techniques of yoga, but it's not well known in the West, despite the fact that it's practiced by millions of people. Nada is a Sanskrit word that refers to flow, and shabd or shabad or shabda refers to word or speech or sound. So we have a flow of sound or sound current, which is what this type of meditation is usually called in English, sound current meditation, and it's also called audible life stream.
So what attracted you to this form of yoga?
Well, I learned this many years ago in Texas when I was a college student, and I met up with a number of people who practiced this method. But what was interesting, for one thing, is that they were all from different groups or different disciplines, different philosophies attached to it, but the same method. And the other thing is that it was rather secretive. Although a lot of books had been written about it, poetry, this type of meditation appears in ancient writings of yoga, there really wasn't any easy way to find out exactly what do you do. And now, many years later, it occurred to me that is still the case. And there are some more books. There are a few things that will tell you how to do it. There's a lovely recent book, many hundreds of pages. You've got to go through 20-plus chapters before you get to the instructions. And I was determined to write something that was mercifully short.
Spoken like a true engineer. So the tagline to your book is called The Guru-Free Guide. And why guru-free? And also you have the phrase, for the rest of us, the sound meditation for the rest of us. What do you mean by that?
Almost without exception, all of the groups that teach sound current meditation almost spend more time focusing on the master than on the meditation. There's much more emphasis in a total surrender to the group and to the master, imagining the master, listening to the master, focusing on the guru. Guru or healer, you'll be exempt somehow from suffering or confusion. And I'm quick to say that is not the approach of this book. This is a natural form of energy. It's a natural form of connection, and you do not need a perfect master, wise however he or she may be. They're usually men, and it is not absolutely necessary to get involved in a a highly controlling cult or group in order to expose this to yourself. And as far as the rest of us, again, the idea is simplicity, get to the point, and learn about it, give it a try, see if it's a worthwhile tool for you without necessarily having to change diet or change beliefs or make a lengthy commitment.
What did you find that this form of yoga does for you, and what will people find in it?
I'm continually amazed by and humbled having found this. And there's the hardest part to talk about, which is spiritual connection. It's one thing to theorize that we're something more than material ingredients walking around, but it's another thing to feel and experience it. So for me, the key to it is this refreshment, renewal, spiritual connection that can be renewed. That's the number one thing that I get out of it. In addition to that, it did improve my grades when I was a college student. In fact, one of the very first times I did this meditation, I meditated for a while, and then I had to pick up a textbook for one of my college classes. This book was absolutely boring. It happened to be a history book. I found it extremely dull, and yet I had to get in a chapter, study a chapter before class the next day. And the only thing that was different was I meditated using this new method, and then sat down to try to get through this chapter. And this chapter was fascinating. The book was amazing. I felt the knowledge just kind of being vacuumed up into my mind. I'm turning page after page and really enjoying it. But it was the same book. Nothing had changed about the old boring book. It wasn't boring anymore. It was something had changed in myself. There's a kind of a light that goes on, or an energy that one takes on, and that can help in comprehension. It can help a person be more the person they want to be, and this is what I have found, in addition to the different experiences and effects that are outlined in the book.
Having read the book, I was amused that first, upon understanding that you listen to the sounds in your head, you block your ears and listen intently to the sounds inside your head, I was thinking, well, this sounds like tinnitus, which I have anyway. And then your next chapter was, no, this is not tinnitus. So tell us a little, describe it. How does it work?
Well, the technique of sound current meditation does begin with and is essentially very close attention and close absorption in inner sound, a specific inner sound, which is what people start with. And most people have had experience of a tone, an inner tone, usually on the right side of the head, the right ear, perhaps. And this tone can lead to additional sounds and additional experiences. And it's always seemed funny to me that in all the ancient writings about this, and the newer writings by the many, many gurus who teach this, they never talk about tinnitus, also called tinnitus. And so there is one book written by a guru who teaches this, who is also a medical doctor. And he basically says the medical profession has this thing all wrong. He calls the sound current a long-distance call to your greater being. Now, this is not to play down the fact that some people have an annoying and disabling condition of tinnitus that they try to get medical treatment for. And perhaps this is not the meditation for them, although I have also heard that some people who do have medically diagnosed tinnitus have actually found it, recovered from it by practicing the methods of sound current meditation. So just to finish on that, medical science still does not really understand what the source of the sound is. For a while, they thought it was malfunctioning cells in the hearing mechanism. However, it's been shown again and again that people with normal hearing, a large percentage of the population with normal hearing, can hear this interior tone. And so I think that it's partly physical, partly physiological, and partly more than physical. Just like human consciousness is partly physical, it's part of the body and the brain. But those of us who are in the new consciousness field know that consciousness is much more than the physical, and that we might even be able to get along without the physical one day, but still remain conscious. So listening to the sound current develops spiritual connection, very tangible experiences of energy flow, especially in the spine, in the energy channels in the spine. It can have a powerful effect, positive effect on dreams, as well as lead to extraordinary experiences like celestial music, transcendental music, and out-of-body experiences. And
it is so easy to do. Tell me, Ben, what is your website?
The website for the book is www.soundcurrent.info. That's one word, soundcurrent.info. And the book is available through Amazon, Apple iBooks, and the other sources.
It is an ebook, and again, it's called The Guru Free Guide to Nada Yoga, Sound Current Meditation for the Rest of Us by Bennett Z. Kobb. Ben, I'm so glad you could be with us today, and I really enjoyed your book, and I recommend it to our listeners. So thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a real pleasure. And I hope you will stay with us for our last guest. We will be right back after these messages.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Live with medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Simone Milicis would like you to know that business can be fun, which is why she wrote the book, Joy of Business. What if you could have the joy of business rather than the stress and struggle? Most of the time, the only thing stopping you from a thriving business is you. In the Joy of Business book, Simone gives you access consciousness tools and pragmatic ways to get out of your own way and to create the business, life, and living you know is possible and beyond what this reality says is achievable. Business is joy. It's creation. It's generative. It can be the adventure of living. You can purchase your copy of the book through Amazon or Joy of Business website, www.accessjoyofbusiness.com.
Eros Evolution is where sexuality and spirituality meets. Join me, clinical sexologist Martha Tara Lee, on Eros Evolution on Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Back with our final guest today, Margaret Grundstein. Now, Margaret was raised in Detroit. Then she headed east for education and then west to follow the great radical migration of the 1970s. Her career ranged from city planning to photography, ultimately creating a niche for herself as a single parent and the owner-director of a preschool in Venice, California. Margaret also has a private practice as a psychotherapist, and she has just published her first book, a memoir called Naked in the Woods, My Unexpected Years in a Hippie Commune. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Margaret, those were interesting years, and you went to the woods to escape some of the patriarchal expectations imposed by society. Did any of these problems follow you into the communal life that you created together?
You know, that's a good question. It's one of the points of the book. When the phraseology and the rhetoric of the age comes, it sounds so almost silly. But we really went with open hearts, or at least I did, believing that that change was necessary and that we would live it if we couldn't change outside, the world outside. But we're human. We bring our human qualities with us. And although it was a glorious time for me and a wonderful experiment, certainly, we went back to the woods. We all of a sudden, ultimately, we were a land that had no running water, no electricity, no utilities whatsoever, and male skills were needed. So here we were, new feminists, the women, and we found ourselves, in mid-19th century technology, where we were dependent on men to chop down the trees or wield some of the heavy equipment. And yes, and money followed us. All the issues of larger society followed us, and we struggled, sometimes successfully and sometimes not, as we wrestled with them.
Well, you came to the woods of Oregon, God bless Oregon, and you were creating this little utopia. Did you actually find what you were hoping for?
I don't think I found what I was hoping for, but I found something just as good and probably more realistic. I went with, I was young. The times were just a spectacularly specific point in American history. And so this is also a historic document, one woman's story. And I kind of followed my husband. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to do, and there were many steps to the process. We were a very loosely organized commune, that there were a lot of artists and architects and a lot of egos. No one was going to listen to one dominant voice, so we weren't followers of a guru or anything like that. I found the glory of stepping away from a highly focused life of achievement. Not that it isn't internal to me and that I haven't come back to it, but I came back to it voluntarily. I found being in the woods and Oregon, the coastal Oregon, and the mountains and the farmlands there are spectacular. So to live daily on that basis with that beauty in my life. I found discovering gardening, living intimately with other people, and the joy of that. So there were many things I looked for that I got, but not necessarily in ways I expected, and that they follow through with me to this day and inform what I do now.
Do you think this was just a moment in time coming after the 60s and the sort of love revolution? Do you think it has any resonance today?
Oh, yes. Well, first, everything comes out of the past and feeds the future. I read books, Helen and Scott Nearing, who in the 40s and 50s had their own little communal situation in the Northeast on the land. Both my daughters live in Portland. I visit Detroit. I visit other cities. I talk to people. Everywhere you see, there's the food revolution, organically grown, locally grown, genetically modified foods, little gardens in backyards. My preschool has a garden. I see desires for community. I see desires for and there's that longing for community is universal, and that longing to be part of something bigger than ourselves, where we feel we're connected to some larger good. I think it may vary somewhat for every generation, but there's a classic history of utopian thought, and it's almost always rural. And it's, how can we get together in harmony and combined with a sense of love for our fellow man and each other. It's a little harder to find than it is to seek, I gotta say. But isn't that the purpose of life?
Now, is there anything that you regret about the experience? And do you think overall it was successful?
They're almost two separate questions. I was at a reading and someone said, well, it sounds like it wasn't working and that you really didn't like it. Those were 5 fabulous years in my life. Who can say that they followed their dream, their best and most extravagant dream to its end? And later when I had children and I was a single parent and my nose was really to the grindstone, that was kind of money in the emotional bank for me. There's no resentment that I didn't have a chance to do some of the exotic or exciting or adventurous things I wanted to do. That there's other groups up there that are still alive, that functioning. There's other loose connections of people that were in smaller groups that still function in different ways, a little more realistically. So we're all still connected in some way or other and carried that history with us. And it was successful in the sense that we connected to a light that shines. And that light still shined in us and will shine in other people. And it doesn't necessarily... we can get something from a marriage even if the marriage doesn't work. We have moments in all relationships that are a bit funky, friendships, children, parents, but we can still, if we have the right attitude, take something from those and move forward into bettering ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. So what was the organization of the group? How did you make decisions, for example?
Ad hoc. My husband was
kind of like life.
And once we moved to my husband was a very strong personality and very charismatic and very philosophical in terms of political orientation. And so he was a great mover and shaker. Once we moved to the land where it really depended on how you could fix your car or build your building because there was no structure except a shack, that Clint, who was an architect and a builder and a big, strong man. So my husband was smaller in physique. The two of them became sort of the two, one more philosophical, one more practical. But ideas could be put out. One day my husband put out money on the table. Unbeknownst to me, it was our last money that we had just picked up from a tax return, slammed it on the table at our communal dinner and said, this is all we've got. I think we need to share our money. Who else is ready to put money up? And that was the discussion. At the table, some people said, well, I don't have anything to put in. I'm broke. Someone else said, I'll put in a little, but I'm saving money out for me. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait, aren't we married? That was my money, too. What happened? And somehow we muddled through that. People would put money in. Someone would say we need something. Someone would help somebody else on a project. Again, very unstructured, but with a great deal of generosity, but also battles, internal and communally as to what is mine and what's yours.
Do you think we can ever find utopia?
I think we only find it inside ourselves, and we find it in moments in life, and we find it if we're inclined to look for it and want to appreciate what's given to us on a day-by-day basis. I have a fabulous life. There have been magnificent moments and down moments as well in my life. That was a great place. It was no different than the rest of life. We're humans. We have feet of clay. And so I think it's what we choose to do with our lives and the attitude and the work we do inside ourselves.
So looking back, would you have done it all over again?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't regret the life I have now, but I think that was a wonderful, I'm thrilled that I jumped all the way in, didn't hold back, didn't keep a day job, left everything behind, and did it full bore. And it was just a wonderful adventure that was fun, opened me up, expanded me past boundaries that had been created and I had created for myself. And it was just wonderful.
So you chose the title Naked in the Woods. I take it thereby hangs a tale?
Yes and no. It's a little, catching the most exotic. I think part of it speaks to the fact that we were, the vulnerability, the openness of the book, the willingness to look at it not just from a dogmatic point of view, and how we were naked to each other, and not just physically as we swam or took a sweat bath, but as we lived with each other. When you live together, even if you're not intimately involved physically, sexually, you get to know each other. You get to know each other's ups and downs, and how we work together and where we forgive each other and where we don't. So truly, our essences were naked to each other, and we saw each other reflected back.
Lovely. Margaret, what's your website?
It's margaretgrundstein.com. So my name, M-A-R-G-A-R-E-T, Grundstein, Grundstein.com.
Margaret Grundstein, and her book is Naked in the Woods, My Unexpected Years in a Hippie Commune. Thank you so much for being with us, Margaret.
Thank you so much. It was a delight.
And I hope you'll join us next week. Thank you for joining us today. In the meantime, visit New Consciousness Review on ncreview.com, where you can subscribe to our free content-packed multimedia magazine and explore our whole podcast archive. You can contact me through the website, again, ncreview.com. Hope you'll join us next week to meet more rising stars of the new consciousness. Until then, shine brightly, dear friends. The world needs your light.